Our next inductee was such a multi-talented individual, to say that he was just a boxing guy would probably be considered an injustice. He was born in Rockaway, New York. It was while playing pool that he was heckled by one of his peers. Well, he invited the heckler outside and promptly knocked him out. A trainer from a boxing gym was at the hall that day and invited him to come try his hand at boxing. He became an amateur boxer, winning a Golden Gloves title and later the Yale Memorial Trophy. He later joined the armed forces and was the first to teach boxing in the military, teaching up to 3,000 soldiers at one time. It literally changed the face of military training. He went on to join the Flying Tigers and was a friend to General Claire Lee Chennault. He helped organize amateur boxing events in Europe and China during World War II and refereed thousands of amateur fights. After his military service, he came back to New York and spent the next 30 years as a full-time boxing referee. Among his accomplishments, he is the only man to referee fights of Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, and Muhammad Ali. He's also the first referee to wave his hands over a fighter to indicate that the fight was finished. He said he wanted the fans in the back rows to know the fight was over, since none of them could possibly hear the count. He later relocated to Florida, where he would serve another 13 years as a boxing judge. He also wrote a book on how to judge boxing. I mentioned that he was so much more than just a boxing man. He was once approached by a contestant in the famed Harvest Moon Ball in New York, who saw him ref and asked if he could teach his son boxing. He said, "Fine, but I want you to teach me ballroom dancing." He became an accomplished dancer. He was an amazing speaker. He became a Toastmasters champion for his speaking. He played musical instruments. He spoke 4 languages. To say he was multi-talented is probably an understatement. He passed away in September of last year. It's such an amazing day for his family. Even though his family is being honored today, another honor was bestowed upon them just 4 days ago on June 20th, when he was laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery in our nation's capital. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame class of 2002, the late referee and judge, Mark Conn. Here to accept on his behalf, please welcome his son, Frank Conn, and daughter, Susan Rice.
When I was 8 years old, my dad would usually get home from the fights around midnight. I would usually be up in my bed trying to imagine what had taken place in the ring. I would see imaginary fighters stalking each other, vying for their right to supremacy. I would play out my own version of the fight like a homemade movie. I knew my dad was the ringmaster, and I hungered to be part of it. I wanted to be in the jungle, in the hunt, in the fight for survival while the thousands of eyes were riveted on the white canvas. As soon as my dad went to bed, I would go to the bathroom, lock the door, and retrieve the passport to my dream, his bloody shirt from the hamper. I would fish it out and carefully put it on with all the sweat and blood glistening to my body. The scent of Madison Square Garden, the smell of the jungle. The smoke, the blood and sweat was an elixir that filled me to the bone. I could hear the roar of the crowd. Now I was truly there. riding the spirit, feeling the magic. I'd reenact my own version of the fight in the mirror. I was the boy referee who controlled the violence and let it out slowly or ferociously as my heart desired. I'd step in on the clinches and I'd make decisions if I wanted another blow to be landed or if I wanted to watch these two titans beat their brains out. What power, what a thrill, what a rush. Nothing else mattered. The third man in control, the master of destiny. I'd always conclude with a knockout because that's what they paid for. And because then I could display my dad's inimitable flair for the dramatic. He'd lead the standing boxer to the neutral corner, and then he'd pick up a very demonstrative count to 10. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're out. He'd throw his hands up high, crossing them in the process, as if God himself had declared the fight over. There I was, bloody shirt and all, on top of Mount Olympus, recording the triumph. I'd always freeze there for a while and let it wash over me. A signature expression sculpted by Michelangelo as the flashbulbs popped. There was nothing more I needed or wanted. I was transported, uplifted, exalted. It was perfect. I slept very well those nights, dreaming about the fight I had just worked, excited about the pictures that I would see the next day in the paper. My dad believed that boxing could be a paragon for your life, that the art of boxing was rich and deep, that there were lessons to be learned, lessons about focus, perseverance, discipline, hard work, goal setting, preparation, rising to the occasion, calmness under fire, humility, respect for others. These were all lessons that he learned from boxing, lessons that he taught to thousands of men, and lessons he taught to me. I'm very honored to accept this award on his behalf. And I know he's up in that great boxing ring in the sky with a smile on his face. Thank you very much.
Before I begin, I would like to thank Harold Letterman, Don Cogswell, Bob Alexander, Carol Meyer, and the Board of Directors for this honorable award and for the wonderful things they spoke about Dad this weekend. It all began when my father was 8 years old. He was into all kinds of sports, especially handball. One night, his father said to him, "You must be home at 6 o'clock no matter what. The boss is coming to dinner. Do not be late." Well, as a sports lover, 6 o'clock went by, 6:30 went by. At 6:45, Dad came home to a rage of punches by my grandfather, and he sent him to his bed. My dad told me that he didn't feel a thing, that it was like forgotten in the sight of the moment, and he knew from that moment he was different. Then, as Bob explained before, Dad got a job in a pool hall at 15 years of age, and while playing one day, someone began to cheat and move the cue ball. So my father said, "I quit." The guy said, "Why?" He said, "You're a cheater." "A cheater? Let's step outside and I'll show you." And as the young boy got to the front door, he turned around, and my father, not out of fear, but out of wanting to protect himself, landed a punch. Bang! Knocked him out cold. There happened to be a trainer at the table, and he looked at him, he said, "Hey kid, do you box?" My father said, "No." He said, "You do now. I'm gonna train you." And so all through high school and college, Dad took the train up to the Bronx, where he continued to box and box and box. He went to CCNY, where he became captain of the boxing team. He also was majoring in recreation, and that's why he studied all kinds of sports. He fought and won the Golden Gloves in Yankee Stadium, in Madison Square Garden, the lightweight championship, and the best overall called the Yale Rubin Trophy. He represented the United States in the international team, boxing in England and in China. Now the war began. Dad was stationed in Fort Knox, where at 4 o'clock in the morning, in 32-degree weather, the Army sergeant got up and he would do these calisthenics. Hup, hup, hup. The way my father described it, he said, my joints were frozen by the second move. So he went to the sergeant and he said, Sergeant, I can do a better job. And day after day he went to the sergeant. Finally, the sergeant said, can you handle a platoon of men? He said, I don't know what that is. Sure. He said, how about a battalion? Sure. And out came 500 men, and Dad began to give them a boxing lesson. And he trained them, and he trained them, and he trained them. Now, when the war began, Dad became very good friends with General Chenault, who was also into athletics. So he asked my father to set up a baseball field, because they were both into baseball. So Dad went out on a rice paddy, and he built a baseball field. Now, General Chenault always wanted to be the pitcher, but he would never bend down. Daddy was the third baseman. So you know that when you throw a ball, you must throw it over the pitcher in order to catch the man out. So one hit, Dad threw the ball and missed General Chenault by 4 inches. So he turned to General Chenault and he said, what did he say? He said, General Chenault, can you do me a favor and bend down when I throw the ball? Otherwise, you might affect the war and its outcome. So, in India, they were beginning boxing, and they were having a very big interest in boxing. And now my dad was not only a major, but the athletic director. So he signed up to box. 3 weeks before the boxing tournament, they said, we're sorry, Major Conn, you cannot box. Why, he asked. Because we don't want you to get hurt, you're a major, but you can be the referee. And that was the start of Dad's career. When he went back to New York, he became in charge of 800 schools in adult education in the Board of Education of New York, as well as, I would consider, a fantastic referee. Again, the likes of Muhammad Ali versus Oscar Bonavena, George Foreman versus Grigano Peralta, Bob Foster and Dick Tiger, Emil Griffith and Nino Benvenuti, Joe Frazier and Oscar Bonavena, and many, many more. Now, all I would like to say, let me tell you one last little story. Dad was dying, and I happened to be going to the hospital. The nurse had called me and said, your father won't eat, and your father won't talk. And I know my dad, he eats and he talks. So what I did is I borrowed a pair of boxing gloves from the neighbor. And I walked into the bedroom, and I said, come on, Mr. Conn. You know that you can eat. Come on, they told you to eat. And all I could hear my father was say, chin down, elbow in. So I leaned over thinking he needed help. Again, he repeated, chin down, elbow in. All of a sudden, the light dawned on. Chin down, elbow in. Bang, bang. My father said, that's my daughter. So I would like to thank everybody on behalf of my brother and I and the family for this award. And this is what my father would tell you in closing. The clock of life is wound but once, and no one has the power to tell just when that clock will stop, at late or early hour. Now is the only time we can to live, love, laugh, and work with a will. Don't wait for tomorrow, for the clock may then be still. This is for you, Pop, in the big ring in the sky. Thank you.